Welcome to the IADS Retail Park, where retail strategies evolve or become cautionary tales. I'm Maya, and today we're diving into one of the most spectacular retail collisions of 2025, when SHEIN, the digital fast fashion giant, tried to go physical at one of Paris's most prestigious addresses. Joining me is Christine Montart, our Director of Markets and Events, who authored the exclusive on what's being called the SHEIN Paradox. Christine, this story has everything: crowds, controversy, and a complete unraveling. It's nice to have you back on the show.
Thanks, Maya. And honestly, when I started researching this, I thought it would be a straightforward story about digital expansion. But it turned into something much bigger, a case study in what happens when two fundamentally incompatible business models collide.
Let's set the scene. November 2025, BHV Marais, right in the heart of Paris. SHEIN opens its first permanent European store. What were people expecting?
Well, the location itself was significant. BHV Marais isn't just any department store, it's an institution dating back to 1856, right near the Place de la Bastille. Shein had been testing pop ups across Europe, but this was different, a permanent presence. And the opening day? 7,000 visitors showed up. The energy was electric.
7,000 people. That's not just curiosity, that's a phenomenon. But then something interesting happened. You wrote that the floors were empty within weeks. Walk me through that shift. Well, the location itself was significant. BHV Marais isn't just any department store. It's an institution dating back to 1856, right near the Place de la Bastille. SHEIN had been testing pop ups across Europe, but this was different, a permanent presence. And the opening day, 7,000 visitors showed up. The energy was electric.
The shift was brutal and fast. As mentioned, the store is completely packed on opening day. But as shoppers started actually browsing, they encountered something that didn't compute with their Shein expectations. Items that cost $2 or $3 online were suddenly priced at 80 to 100 and even 118 euros in store.
Wait, over 100 euros for a SHEIN piece?
Right. And that's where the paradox kicks in. Shein built its entire empire on being radically cheap. Their online model works because they have no physical overhead, no middlemen, direct to consumer shipping from factories. But the moment they entered physical retail, especially in a premium Paris location, all those costs materialized. Rent, staffing, inventory sitting on shelves instead of moving directly from factory to customer. The math just didn't work.
So, what you're describing isn't just a pricing miscalculation, it's a fundamental business model incompatibility.
That's exactly it. Shein's competitive advantage is algorithmic efficiency. They're pushing out 2,000 to 6,000 new items daily. Their design to market cycle is 3 to 7 days. That's insane. And it only works in a digital environment where they can test demand in real time, produce in micro batches, and iterate constantly. Physical retail demands the opposite. You need inventory sitting in a space, curated collections, longer product life cycles. These are opposing logics.
And the backlash wasn't just from disappointed shoppers. You documented something much bigger: over 100 French brands filing legal action. How did this escalate so quickly?
BHV Marais wasn't just hosting Shein, they were essentially legitimizing them in the eyes of traditional fashion. And that triggered an avalanche. LVMH pulled out. SMCP brands left. American Vintage, Maison Kitsune, Sessun, all these brands that had built their reputation on ethical production, fair wages, sustainable practices, they saw Shein getting premium department store placement and said, "We're out."
There's something almost symbolic about that. These heritage brands choosing to abandon a historic Parisian department store rather than share retail space with SHEIN.
It was a values collision and it went political fast. The French Prime Minister got involved. There were questions in Parliament about how SHEIN, which faces ongoing allegations about labor practices and environmental impact, could be given such a prominent platform. The whole thing became a referendum on what French retail stands for.
All right, Christine, let's talk numbers because they're surprising. You mentioned a 54% drop in Shein's online sales and a 70% revenue decline for BHV. Those aren't just bad months, that's existential.
Oh, yeah, and that's what makes this so significant for retail strategists. Shein generates $32.5 billion in revenue annually. They're not some small player experimenting. This was a calculated expansion move, and it failed spectacularly. For BHV, losing 70% of revenue because of one partnership decision, that's catastrophic. They're now dealing with the aftermath, trying to win back brands, restore their reputation, figure out what they stand for.
Now, what surprised you most when you were reporting this story?
Honestly, how fast the digital advantages became physical liabilities. Shein's whole strategy is built on being cheap, fast, and everywhere online. But in a physical space, cheap looked tacky next to heritage brands. Fast meant the store felt chaotic and poorly curated. And everywhere translated to zero exclusivity, the opposite of what makes a department store destination appealing. The other thing that struck me was the consumer reaction. Shein's core customers weren't interested in shopping them in store at higher prices, and traditional BHV customers were actively hostile to their presence. They satisfied nobody.
This raises a question that I think every retail professional listening needs to consider. Is omnichannel retail actually achievable for every business model, or are there some digital native brands that fundamentally can't translate to physical?
That's the billion-dollar question. We've seen successful digital to physical transitions, Warby Parker, Glossier, Bonobos, but those brands build their online experience around a specific value proposition beyond just price. When they went physical, they could extend that proposition into experiential retail. Shein's only proposition is price and volume, and neither of those translates well to premium physical retail.
So, if you're a department store executive listening to this, what's the lesson? Is it never partner with digital native brands, or is there something more nuanced?
I think the lesson is about alignment. BHV wanted foot traffic and relevance with younger consumers. Shein wanted legitimacy and physical presence. But they never asked the harder question: are our brand values compatible? Can Shein's ultra fast, ultra cheap model coexist with the heritage craftsmanship and ethical standards that define a place like BHV Marais? The answer turned out to be no. And the cost of learning that lesson was massive for both parties.
There's also a broader question here about retail's future. We keep hearing about physical retail's comeback, about how digital brands need stores to complete the customer journey. But this case suggests physical retail isn't just an additional channel, it's a different business entirely.
That's what makes this story so important, beyond just the specifics of Shein and BHV. It challenges the narrative that every successful online brand should naturally expand into physical retail. Maybe some business models are meant to stay digital. Maybe the efficiencies that make you dominant online are exactly what make you incompatible with physical spaces.
And maybe physical retail, especially department stores, need to be much more selective about what innovation and relevance actually mean. Chasing youth demographics at the cost of brand integrity, that's not a strategy.
What happened at BHV is a warning shot. Department stores have been struggling to define their purpose in an omnichannel world. Many thought the answer was bringing in digital native brands, creating Instagrammable moments, and attracting younger shoppers. But if that means abandoning the values that made you a destination in the first place, you end up with empty floors and departed brands.
Before we wrap things up here, I want to ask about the aftermath. Where do things stand now?
Last I reported, BHV is in damage control mode, rebuilding relationships with heritage brands, reassessing what belongs in their space. Shein, interestingly, hasn't abandoned physical retail entirely. They're still doing pop ups, but the permanent store strategy seems to be on pause. They're learning perhaps that their model works best when it's temporary, when it's an event rather than a presence.
An event versus a presence. That's a useful distinction.
It is. Because events create urgency and novelty without requiring the same level of curation and brand alignment. The moment Shein tried to become a permanent fixture next to established brands, all the contradictions became visible.
Christine, this has been such a good talk. For retail leaders and pros out there, I think there are three takeaways here. First, business model translation isn't automatic. What works digitally may be fundamentally incompatible with physical retail. Second, partnerships need value alignment, not just traffic goals. And third, sometimes the smartest channel strategy is knowing which channels not to pursue.
I think we can add one more. Legitimacy can't be bought or borrowed. Shein thought a prestigious address would give them credibility. Instead, it exposed the gap between their model and traditional retail values. That's a lesson that extends far beyond fast fashion.
Well said. Christine, thanks for bringing this story to light and for the insights you've shared today. For those listening, you can read Christine's full exclusive, The SHEIN Paradox, When Digital Ultra Fast Fashion Meets Physical Reality, and check out store photos on Substack at IADS. Exclusive Insights. The link is in the episode description.
Thanks for having me, Maya. These are the kinds of retail stories that shape strategy, and I'm glad we could explore this one together.
For everyone tuning in to IADS Retail Park, remember that in retail, innovation matters, but so does knowing what you stand for. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn at the International Association of Department Stores for more insights. We'll see you next time with more stories from the retail front lines. Please be advised that this podcast features AI cloned voices created with human oversight. All content is reviewed by experts for accuracy and relevance.